All right, welcome everyone. Just give another minute to allow everyone to come in. Feel free to type in where you're coming in from, where you're dialing in from. Always find that interesting. See if we can find the furthest away participant. All right, another 20 seconds and we're going to kick this thing off. Finally, someone. Thank you, Adam. All right, ATL. I like it. You're the winner so far. Wisconsin. That's far away. We're coming out of Plano, Texas here. Well, at least I am.
I'm here with you,
Texas.
Tim.
Oh yeah, that's right, Darren. It's right down the hall. we should have done the same. That would have been a little awkward. All right, let's kick it off. So, welcome everyone to our fireside chat on optimizing your SOC with Microsoft Security and MDR. My name is Tim Bandos. I am the field CISO for Critical Start, and more recently, I'm also the vice president of sales engineering. They just like to throw all the different roles at me here, but I will also be your host for today. And I am incredibly excited to be joined by Terrence Starling and Jason Moody from Critical Start. But before we dive in, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. The session is being recorded, and you'll also receive a recording within 24 hours if you'd like to view it again. We'll also use polls throughout the webinar. So if you don't mind answering those polls, submit your answers once, and then feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat window. Thank you. Continue to do that. Coming in from South Carolina, I love it. Plus, one lucky winner who submitted a question during registration will win a $200 Amazon gift card. So you might as well submit a question. I mean, just to be in the raffle. So let's meet our experts. We're going to show off the board here. Why don't we start with you, Terrence? Terrence, can you talk a little bit about yourself and what you have done thus far leading up to here at Critical Start?
Absolutely. I'm happy you said just a little bit, or else I'll be talking for the next hour. Hello, everyone. My name is Terrence Starling. I am a advisory senior security analyst here at Critical Start. I started as an analyst and worked my way up through the engineering team, and now as an advisor for a lot of our clients and partners. So it's nice to be here today, and hopefully I'm able to provide you guys with some good feedback, some good perspectives on a solid MDR solution.
Sounds amazing. Terrence, thank you so much for being here. Jason, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everyone. My name is Jason Moody. I'm the Microsoft Solution Principal here at Critical Start. I've been with the company for about a year and a half. Before that, had over a decade of IT and IT security experience, starting out in infrastructure engineering for about 6 years. And then for the last 5 years or so, I've been, really hyper-focused in the Microsoft security and compliance stack. Did everything from engineering to architecting to now helping customers operationalize their Microsoft solutions. And here at Critical Start, I work really closely with security leaders to help them maximize the value of their Microsoft solutions by not just improving their operational efficiency, but also their overall security posture and security maturity. So really, really happy to be joining the call today and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you, Jason. And just as for myself, so I've been inside, I guess I'm the grandpa of the group. I've been in the industry for 20 years, which seems like a long time, but it's gone in just a blink, essentially. So I've been the CISO at various cybersecurity companies in the past, the last 10 years or so, in various cybersecurity vendors. I also ran security for the DuPont function, so manufacturing chemical company. Absolutely love incident response and forensics and running MDR businesses, and now running sales engineering organizations and also being the field CISO, providing executive level guidance for our customers and prospects that are coming inbound. But enough about me. Who cares about me? I want to hear from the professionals, the people who are out in the field day to day. Jason and Terrence, we're going to kick this thing off. So let's start with you, Terrence. Given your experience, operating within Critical Start's SOC environment, which I absolutely love. I love kind of having that SOC security analyst type experience, working your way up. What are some of the top challenges that you've seen working on these SOC teams, and how maybe Microsoft security tools can assist?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Yeah, I think there are so many challenges to begin, right? Whether it's emerging threats, whether it's new methods of handling these threats, whether these threat actors are finding new tools to use at their disposal, right? The threats are never ending, and the challenges aren't because of that as well, right? But the biggest challenge that I kind of see in a SOC environment right now is the amount of alerts people are getting, right? That volume, that noise. It's really nice to have all these tools at your disposal that present all this information, but what you do with that information is very important. And if you're getting bogged down by the amount of it, it's going to become a challenge, right? The way I like to look at it is coming from the automotive industry, right? You can have a master mechanic in the shop, but if you have 500 vehicles coming through a day, that master mechanic is going to seem a little bit lesser, right? So finding solutions to that challenge is pertinent in our current threat environment, right? Yeah,
I love the mechanic analogy, but I have to bring it up because artificial intelligence is here. Can AI at any point assist in that process? Is the SOC team leveraging AI today? I mean, what's your thoughts on maybe just leveraging AI in general as it kind of supports triaging security events and alerts that are coming into the SOC team?
yeah, absolutely. I am a little biased, right? I love AI, but at the same time, I find having that human element is very important, right? AI is only going to become more and more integrated into our solutions in all aspects of our life, not just in security, not just in how we use our cell phones or chat GPT or any large language model, right? We're going to see it take over pretty much every facet in some element. The problem currently with AI, though, that ends up presenting a brand new challenge is the nuance you see in AI, right? Is it actually taking into account a lot of the contextual information that's occurring in your landscape, right? In your environment. And so having that human element still makes a huge difference. Having someone that's able to look at the little things that are changing, whether it be things that are changing based on things like time, right? Like, hey, right now this is expected behavior, but next week it won't be, right? AI is kind of like a training model where you're saying, hey, this is expected, but is it taking into account next week that pen testing is over? And all of a sudden that binary you just saw that's spreading through your environment is no longer expected or authorized behavior. That's where you still want the human element. Where AI is super beneficial to me right now, you heard me mention it in the first part of this question, or I'm sorry, the first part of the prompt, is you have this challenge of all these new vectors coming in at all times, right? I came from IT myself, and so moving to this side, it's kind of like, oh, how do I fix this network printer to all of a sudden, wait, phishing. But wait, now they're not. I can't find the misspellings. That's not the dead giveaway in phishing, right? Now it's perfectly spelled. How do I know that this is a threat, right? Uh, those are some of the elements where you still want that human element to be able to go in there and say, hey, this is changing. But at the same time, AI can be beneficial to a SOC team because as these new threats are emerging, you're not always going to have this expert knowledge base around that specific threat. Well, you can go to AI and it can take a lot of the context that it's seeing across the internet at the time and say, hey, this is what you need to look for. This is where it's at. You just have to go in and separate kind of the nuance, find the areas where it might be kind of seeing things that aren't really there, right? And turn that into a reality. It's not necessarily difficult, but it can be beneficial when done the right way. So AI is still beneficial to a SOC team, still beneficial to environment or an organization that wants to make sure they've locked down everything and they're seeing everything and they're understanding everything. You just have to make sure you understand it's not quite at a point where it has the nuance of the human mind.
Yep, and I couldn't agree more. So what you're saying is human-led, AI-assisted, or AI-accelerated to some sort. I love that. Well, you're irreplaceable, Terrence. Don't worry, AI is not coming for you. We're going to make sure that you're retained forever here. As we talk about some of these challenges, Jason, kind of over to you. How does Microsoft security solutions like Defender and Sentinel help tackle some of these challenges that Terrence is talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and even just kind of piggybacking off what Terrence was saying is that, we all know that attackers are getting smarter and faster and using new vectors, right? And the classic kind of infrastructure of security of just going with endpoint protection and maybe a SIM behind it and maybe, looking at your firewall logs is not enough. Attackers, they're going for your identities. As we all know, they're starting with phishing emails, right? So you need the proper tools in place. Before we even talk about operationalizing, you need the right tools in place, right? And so you need the right defenses and shield in place. So that's where Defender and Sentinel comes in. And Defender XDR, the suite, it can protect against all of those major vectors. So Defender for identity and Entra ID protection, it's protecting your identities. Defender for Office 365 is protecting your emails. That's your email hygiene, your anti-phishing solution. Defender for Cloud Apps is your CASB solution. Defender for Endpoint is your endpoint solution. So Microsoft has done a really good job of building this, what's known as the Defender XDR suite. Some people may have known it as 365 Defender previously. This suite that encompasses all of the major protection vectors that are really important to a security organization and security practice. And on our side, on the SOC side, being able to actually investigate an alert across all of those vectors, and the fact that, alerts in Defender actually talk to each other help speed up our investigations. Real quick example, let's say somebody sends a phishing email that has malware in it, and it's compromising the user's accounts. Well, that's email, identity, and endpoint vectors all in one attack, right? So having the Defender XDR stack to not only protect in all of those areas, but also alert on all of those areas and provide correlated data is really important. Sentinel, I would say, on the SIM source side, it can be very, very valuable to bring all of your logs into one place, especially if you have things like firewall logs and third-party logs that you really need to, look at those logs and have alerting for them. Firewalls is the most common one we see with all of our customers. And being able to ingest that all into one place in Sentinel as a SIM source solution is really powerful. As we have here up on the slide, teams being buried in alerts, that's something that we handle. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit on in the talk here today, but something that we handle right from onboarding with all of our customers is reducing those noisy alerts down by 99% in the first few weeks of onboarding. So the combining the power of what Microsoft has to protect you across the spectrum and bring all of your logs from all of your major protection vectors into one place, and then adding a SOC on top of it really, really accelerates your security practice, and really helps there. So hopefully I hit all the points there.
I think that was pretty comprehensive, Jason. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess AI was one. I could hit on that really quick. Oh, I'll hit on that really quickly.
Quickly, yeah.
We were actually, our organization was, when we're talking about AI in terms of Microsoft, obviously the product is Copilot, right? And our SOC was actually a part of the Copilot for Security Design program. We found that the product is really, really good for enriching alerts and providing maybe a little bit quicker investigation or maybe some nice visual aids for investigation. It absolutely cannot replace a human, to Terrence's point. I mean, it's called Copilot and not pilot for a reason, right? So Copilot means it still needs us. It still needs us to put in things and work with it. It cannot replace a SOC analyst, and it absolutely cannot be as smart as a SOC analyst. And quite frankly, I wouldn't really want AI responding to alerts for me fully, because it could make the wrong decision and start isolating hosts or start, running investigations that you don't want it to run that could actually be detrimental to you. So using it more as a tool to enhance a security operation rather than replacing security operation is really how I feel that people should be using Copilot. And we've worked with customers who have Copilot and other AI tools as well. So.
I love that. I might actually use that to pilot vision, because that was actually pretty brilliant. Thanks you. So it's kind of like a wingman or a wing woman. I don't know, however that qualifies.
Yeah. That's how I see it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I love Microsoft's kind of ecosystem of security solutions, and it's evolved significantly, since the Microsoft ATP days, the advanced threat protection capability. So I'm excited, to see what comes out. I guess what happens when you pour billions of dollars into, evolving these tools. But it is nice to see that. I saw a meme recently too. I forget where I saw, but it was that, hackers don't break in, they log in now, right? So kind of having that visibility or component across, identity, endpoint, cloud, network, it's absolutely critical, right, in order to detect, today's threats. So that was good. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that. So with these powerful tools, Terrence, this is for you. There's often a gap in making them work effectively. We see that a lot of times with companies, purchasing point solutions, and they've got, maybe a CrowdStrike and an Okta, and all different types of solutions, which is fine. But at the same time, how do you bridge that gap from an MDR perspective if they are leveraging all these different capabilities? I mean, do you recommend going with a pure platform play, or I would love to kind of get your feedback on that.
Absolutely. That's a question as an advisor that I get more often than you would probably think. It's always good to have the tool in place, right? That's better than not having a tool. That's better on relying on just a human hoping they see a malicious file in a download folder. When I worked in IT previously before I came to Critical Start, that was a very big problem, was unmonitored hosts sitting in our environment. Bring your own devices sitting in our environment, right? So having the security tool is step one, right? Having some type of protection. Step two is having a skilled group of people dedicated to actually doing the things necessary to make sure that tool is configured for your environment, right? You don't want to just buy a suit that's ill-fitted. You want to have it tailored directly to your person, right? Same thing here. Having that MDR provider guarantees that you don't just have the protection, but you have it configured in a way that guarantees that your environment, the decisions you're making day to day in your environment, right, the actions taking place in your environment are all covered safely and protected, right? To speak back to the metaphor I made a second ago using automotives, right? In a sense, it's like having the garage to work on cars, but no one in it, right? It's good to have that. You have the tools now you need to do the work you need to do, but you still need to put a team of people in place that are able to utilize all of the functions necessary of that tool to do what you actually are paying for it to do.
Guys, I feel like you worked on that analogy before this webinar. It's pretty good. You're kind of tying it all together. I like that. That's fantastic. No, I couldn't agree more. So you touched on, the fundamentals of a mature cybersecurity program, having that people, process, and technology, the PPT, which is absolutely critical. So having that tool and having the visibility is, step one. It's critically important to have that visibility, but then you need to have the people and process to optimize it, operationalize it, and make sure that it's actually working effectively, right? Doing what it says it's supposed to do. Given that, this is for you, Jason. Could you maybe explain a little bit around, how the MDR services work and the integration and support that goes into it, from a Microsoft security tooling perspective? Obviously we can go down the rabbit hole of all these other technologies, but I kind of want to focus on Microsoft because we've got some pretty deep API integrations there. But I'd love to hear, how does Critical Start do that today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, ever since, Defender for Endpoint, it used to be called Defender ATP, right? Back when it was first released. Ever since it was first released, we were the first MDR provider to actually link up to it via API. So we've been working with Microsoft since 2017, or maybe leading into 2018. We've been working with them ever since to ensure that our platform and our services align with the direction that Microsoft is going. So what does that mean? So that means that we have actually built our platform to not just meet what Microsoft does, but also enhance it. We're a very API-driven company, so all of the products and services that we integrate with are via APIs. We're not requiring an agent for you to deploy. We're not requiring all this extra infrastructure for you. It's literally just, we're setting up API integrations and setting the proper permissions for our security analysts. What that allows us to do is that it allows our SOC to have a deeper investigation. So we can use, we can use permissions that analysts would normally use like PowerShell for. So let's use the phishing alert example, for example. We've built via our API integrations, we have built the ability for our security analysts to run deeper investigations beyond just what the alert shows. And they can also take response actions with those API integrations. So let's start with the investigation. So let's say a phishing alert comes in and it says that it hit two users' mailboxes. Well, any good SOC analyst out there, and I'm sure Terrence could attest to this, is going to want to make sure that it didn't hit more than two mailboxes, right? The alert might say it hit two mailboxes, but it might have hit 5 mailboxes, and that alert just hasn't come in yet. Well, the plugins that we've built via API allow our analysts very quickly within our portal to investigate deeper for that phishing alert to see, oh, yeah, this actually did hit 5 mailboxes, and I need to delete the phishing emails out of all of these mailboxes. So from an investigation standpoint, we've built enhancements that improve, investigation efficiency very highly and that's reducing attacker dwell time, which is huge when it comes to security, right? The other side of it is response actions. Via our API integrations, we've also built response action capabilities. So in that same scenario, I'm going to keep using that scenario because it's very common nowadays, right? Phishing alert, compromised account, and maybe malware on the device as well. Well, what we can do with our integrations is that straight from our platform, instead of having to hop around a bunch of portals in Defender, straight from our platform, we can delete all the phishing emails. We can revoke and reset users' passwords depending on the type of attack. And we can also isolate the device if it has malware on it. It just depends on the attack as to what we're going to do. But pretty much all of the response actions that are available on the Microsoft side, we could do straight from our portal. So this really speeds up investigation and response. So that's one really key piece, I would say. And not to take too much more time, but one other piece is custom content. Our security engineering team has also built custom detections across the Microsoft security stack. So what does that mean for you? It means that out of the box, you have detections with your security tools like Defender. We're adding on top of that with extra detections to increase your detection fidelity, to ensure that all the things that we've seen as a SOC over the past 10 plus years to actually protect against certain types of attacks that the tools don't have out of the box, we're adding in for you. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, we talked about alert fatigue. That's for any security team out there. We have something called the Trusted Behavior Registry, which is a human curated catalog of known good behavior. It's essentially over 94,000, last time I checked, filters and playbooks that we've built. And a lot of those are specifically for the Microsoft security stack. So what does that mean is, let's say you turn on all these tools and you optimize them, and now you have 5,000 alerts every month, and it's really hard for your security team to scrub through them. Well, that Trusted Behavior Registry with all those filters and playbooks that our team has built out over the years, we can reduce all of those false positives within those 5,000 alerts by up to 99% within your first 4 to 6 weeks of onboarding. So what does that mean? That means that the security teams now went from 5,000 to probably, I don't know what 99% or 1% of that is. I guess that would be 5 alerts. You went from 5,000 alerts or 50 alerts, maybe. I'm not doing math correctly. But you went from 5,000, right? 5,000 alerts to 50 alerts in a month. I mean, that's only a couple alerts a day as opposed to hundreds of alerts a day that your team has to scrub through. Obviously, as a provider, we're the one taking those actions for you. So it's a huge lift off the security team's shoulders after they've all onboarded with us within 6 weeks. It's a huge lift that they're focusing on the alerts that matter, and they can actually focus on building custom content and more proactive security measures. So we've got custom detections, our Trusted Behavior Registry filtering out false positives and building automation, and then also our integrations, which are building faster investigation and response time. So sorry, it was a long answer, but
that was incredibly long, Jason. No, it was good. It was actually very informative too. And the other thing I like about that too, I don't know if you really mentioned this, but on the SOC team, and I've seen them do this during the phishing analysis, they do a bit of a blast radius too, to ensure that they are being comprehensive and they haven't missed messages that maybe have different subject lines and they were targeted for different users. Did individuals click on certain URLs and maybe send credentials to a fake website, so now you've got credential theft on that side. So I think the amount of work and effort that does go into that phishing analysis is incredible, and no other MDR provider really goes to that depth. Now, let's be honest there. I'm not talking smack on the other MDR providers, but I know for a fact they do a lot of automation on that piece, where we really do make sure we take our time and we provide them, here's the risk and here's a much more comprehensive view of what truly transpired. On the chat line, Jason, something came in for you. Based on that phishing email scenario, the question came in: is this automated, or is that something that they would have to reach out, to the SOC team to do that sort of analysis? You could answer that. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's a great question. I see from Caesar Pata. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I mean, essentially, in terms of automated, the process can be automated, but in terms of us actually responding to the alert, It really depends on basically what we do with our customers every time that they decide to be in business with us is we define what's known as a rules of engagement. What that rules of engagement is it states when a certain types of alerts come in, what do you authorize Critical Start to respond to and use response actions for? And we can get very, very granular with that. So like, let's use the phishing alert example as you asked in your question there is, in that example, if you wanted Critical Start when we had that type of alert, right? Like a multi-vector phishing alert that compromised accounts and malware was spread, and you wanted us to do all three of those response actions for you, which is, delete all the phishing emails, revoke the user sessions or reset their passwords, and isolate the device. Obviously, different alerts and attacks are different. But for that scenario, if you wanted Critical Start to do that, we would define that in the rules of engagement so that when our SOC received those types of alerts, we would automatically go ahead and kick off those types of response actions. But there we do work with, and the reason we make that custom and we don't automate it for everyone is a lot of our customers, they have very sensitive endpoints that they might not necessarily want us to isolate, right? They may have hospital devices that we can't just isolate and get, cut offline, So we try to cater the rules of engagement to what your organization needs. But if you wanted us to automated, if you wanted us to automate it, we absolutely could, and we do that for a lot of our customers now. So hopefully that helps.
That was good. So Terrence, Jason might have stole a little bit of your thunder on that with his elongated response around the TBR, but maybe you can answer it kind of beyond the TBR. When we talk about alert fatigue, I would love to know how Critical Start is tackling that, leveraging the Microsoft security tool stack. So maybe you can give a little bit of a different perspective, kind of beyond what we're doing on the Trusted Behavior Registry.
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, TBR. I know you said, hey, beyond that, but number one, TBR, right? Because again, with all that noise, you want to create an environment. I keep saying environment. You want to create a space or a bucket full of the things that are either suspicious, unknown, or known malicious, right? Oftentimes, a lot of these events, not just the alerts, not just the incidents, depends on the security tool, right? Same intent, different verbiage, right? You don't want to be looking at a whole lot of known good all the time. And oftentimes, once you look at something one time, you can make a determination that's Google Chrome updating. I don't need to see that again, right? We could filter that out, right? Now I'm looking at this other Chrome behavior that is not typical. This is not nominal behavior. This is not stuff that we've seen before and designated as expected. When I reach out to that user has no idea what's going on there. That's the information we actually want to be able to get to you guys. Once you guys tell us at that point, hey, that's actually nominal behavior, now we can add that information to the TBR, right? That allows us to immediately clamp down on alert fatigue. Number two, the human element. Remember how I was saying AI doesn't always understand nuance, right? We have a team of analysts here who are looking through all this stuff. They're utilizing OSINT. They're utilizing AI, right, to figure out, hey, is this behavior stuff that I actually need to send to the client? Or is this something I can actually take care of on my side without bothering them? That way they can continue focusing on the things that are true positive malicious, right? Unknown, suspicious behavior, right? That's number two. Number three, in terms of enhancing that alert fatigue, right? Or reducing, you don't want to enhance it, right? Reducing that alert fatigue is just being able to say, okay, well, number one, I trust the team that's working through this. I trust that the TBR is doing its job. I trust that I have that human element working in benefit of my team. Now you have an extension of your team, right? That's what we're looking at when we say MDR. It's more than just the tool because the tool can have automation, right? Technically speaking, you could add an MDR provider and say, hey, we just want everything done through AI. Throw everything in the TBR and whatever's left, we'll look at it. Well, we know breaches have happened because of that, right? Think about Target, right? Their breach years and years ago was a medium priority escalation, right? That ended up leaking millions of people's credit card and personal information out there. And it wasn't because there was a lack of an escalation. It was because there were so many escalations. They had decided they only care about the highs. That's where having that MDR provider that's saying, hey, we're not sending you to go to Jason's point, right? And do the math, right? We're not sending you 100%. We're sending you the small 1% of things that are actually classifiable or characterizable, right? Might be creating words here. I was thinking that when Jason said the number a second ago, I was like, oh, that's where AI would help. What's 1% of 5,000, right?
550.
And so, yes, those three elements all work hand in hand when you have an MDR provider that's actually looking to not just send you stuff, not just say we see everything, right? But to say we're looking for the stuff that's actually valuable. We're looking to cut through the noise. We're looking to make sure you're spending your valuable analyst time on the things that are actually pertinent.
Yeah, that's entirely true. And that target breach too, super cringe. It kind of reminds me of, the Spider-Man meme. You think all the security analysts are like pointing at each other, like, whose fault was that? Because it's tough, right? I mean, when you have a queue that's that massive, unfortunately you're gonna miss things. So, we see that. So Jason, when it comes to responding to threats, obviously speed is everything. It, kind of goes beyond just how many alerts are in a queue. Like how do you be effective at rapid response? How do you ensure that you are responding within an SLA time frame so that your mean time to respond or your mean time to detect is minimized as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once we've got the alerts down to 1%, right? It would be a lot harder for us to meet an SLA if we were dealing with that 5,000 alert, or if you put that in a day, it's probably like a few hundred alerts as opposed to like a few alerts, right? So first of all, we, like as Terrence and I were talking about, we reduced those alerts, but now with the alerts that we're dealing with, that means that they're likely either unknown or true positive alerts, right? Which means, as we were kind of talking about earlier, it's very, very important to reduce attacker dwell time. The more time that you allow the attacker in your environment to start crawling around, especially once like a true positive alert comes in, the longer that you allow them to crawl around and start moving laterally and doing reconnaissance and trying to grab people's accounts and elevate their privileges, the longer you allow that to happen, the more damage will be done and the worse it'll be for the organization, right? And so that's why, we at Critical Start, we take response time very seriously. So our leaders actually built in our contracts, not SLOs, which are objectives. We built actual SLAs that are contractual, which are 1 hour SLAs, which means that we have to investigate and respond to all alerts with an MTTD and MTTR of 1 hour. Most of the time, we're much less than that. I think I looked at our global numbers, and then our detect was somewhere around like 15 minutes, and our respond was somewhere around like 30 or 40 globally across all
32
of our
minutes globally.
customers.
Yeah, I just looked at that
Yeah,
too.
which is
It's crazy.
incredible, right? I mean, we've heard horror stories about people not getting responses for alerts for 3 days, and it was a high priority alert. We don't think that that's acceptable here. We think that alerts should be responded to, and that's regardless of priority. Like Terrence gave a really good example. Sometimes attackers are really sneaky, and they crawl into your environment with low and medium, which with actions that generate low and medium alerts, but really those alerts are real, they're true positive, right? So we respond in that 1 hour contractual SLA, regardless of our alert priority within 1 hour. And within our contracts, we actually owe the customer service credits back if we do not respond within that hour. So we try to make sure we put our money where our mouth is, per se, and make sure that we're responding to customers' alerts in a timely manner, so that we can reduce attacker dwell time and stop attackers in their tracks.
Yeah, Jason, I'm just going to bring up a slide because I love this slide. I don't know if you built this slide, but it looks fantastic.
Yeah, hit enter one more time.
Maybe just talk a little bit about that, right? In terms of kind of all the different entrance vector points and the value that Microsoft platform really provides to a customer, right? When you have all that visibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's even one little arch that's added to it. So like try clicking maybe.
I don't know where that arch went. Well, there's
there
the
it
arch.
is.
You're right.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
It.
Yeah, so this is I actually worked with Microsoft on this slide. They basically did most of this slide. They use this in their marketing, but I use it very often. This really shows, we've been talking, we talked earlier on in this discussion about how attackers are getting smarter. We can't just worry about endpoint. We need to worry about identity. We need to worry about our email hygiene. We need to worry about our cloud apps. And we need to also worry about internal things. But let's start with the security side, right? If we look at the top of this image here, The dotted line is showing a common attack kill chain for an attacker, right? And obviously attacks are different, but a lot of them happen in this general order. So it starts with a phishing email, or maybe, a bad, malicious link or a malicious attachment, getting somebody to go to a website that gives them a bad payload. And then, then once that malware, they click on that, the malware is installed. The attacker now is trying to gain command and control. So that's on the endpoint. Then they're going to start trying to get accounts, right? The ultimate goal of an attacker generally is to exfiltrate data, right? There are things like DDoS attacks where they're just trying to deny your service and they might just take your accounts, but most of the time they want money, so they're going to try to take your data, right? So then they're going to try to go to the identities so that they can find an account that has the like the access to the data that they want to exfiltrate. So they'll do things like laterally move or do reconnaissance. They might brute force your cloud account, right? And and then they're all the way home to exfiltrating your data, right? So how Defender protects against all of that? Defender for Office 365 is your email hygiene. That's your email protection. That's essentially has anti-phishing, anti-spam, safe links, safe attachments, tons of really, really good things in there. Defender for Endpoint is obviously protecting our endpoints. Defender for Identity, that works by putting a sensor on your domain controllers if you have on-premise identities. And that's protecting against your on-premise identities and also on-premise nefarious behavior. So all that lateral movement that can happen between servers and things of that nature, that's what that's detecting and providing alerts for. I call it the unsung hero of the Defender stack because not enough people are talking about it, but it's very valuable. Entra ID protection is protecting our cloud accounts. That also has features such as identity protection, which can, essentially alert on things like impossible travel. So let's say somebody signs in from Washington, D.C. right now, and then 2 minutes later, they sign in from California. Well, unless they can teleport and have a superpower, they didn't just go to, California in 2 minutes. So there's only two ways that could happen. Either A, they hopped on a VPN that's in California, which is not very likely, but it does happen sometimes. Or B, there's malicious activity happening with one of those sign-ins. So that's what Entra ID protection can help signal against. It's saying, hey, this account signed into the cloud in these two areas that are nowhere close to each other. That's an impossible travel. You should look into this, right? So that's what Entra ID protection, the type of alerts it'll give you. And then Defender for Cloud Apps is a CASB tool. CASB is Cloud Access Security Broker for those who aren't familiar with that term. Essentially, it's providing governance and protection for your cloud apps. So think of all your SSO apps that you use your work Microsoft account to sign in to. You can provide governance and protection across those the cloud apps in your environment, and also set up policies for them. So that's really so everything you see in gray here, right, is what's considered Defender XDR, right? So when you hear the term Defender XDR that we've kind of used, that's all of these products in gray. That's the suite of Defender XDR tools. And having a tool in each of these vectors is so key. And where Microsoft really, really shines is that all of these tools talk to each other and provide context based on anomalies that are happening. So if you have a bunch of disparate tools, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good tools out there, and this is coming from the Microsoft guy, right? And this is a Microsoft focused conversation, but even I can admit there's good tools out there. The problem is that those tools don't always talk to each other well and don't correlate, right? So the value you're getting with Microsoft is when you have a multi-vector attack that includes endpoint identity and email, you can have data from all of those alerts correlate into each other from one incident that really makes investigating and responding to those alerts much more efficient. And so there's a lot of value there. As on the bottom side of this, I'll go through these items pretty quickly, but the bottom three that you see are information protection, data loss prevention, and insider risk management. These are more compliance focused tools inside what are known as Microsoft Purview. and that stack. And so information protection is allowing you to label your documents and provide encryption on them. This is very key at the document level to really protect yourself. If you have a lot of compliance requirements, like if your organization has a lot of compliance requirements, these three products that you see, especially information protection and data loss prevention, can help you meet those compliance requirements and also protect your data. So information protection can, it's classifying the data, it's labeling it, and also providing encryption. Data loss prevention is preventing sensitive data from leaving your organization or from going where it's not supposed to. So let's say you have social security numbers, any kind of HIPAA data or PII data. If you're in government contracting, if you have that kind of data, sensitive confidential data in there, this prevents that data from leaving your organization by setting up information types that are matched when somebody tries to send it externally. So that's where DLP really comes into play. And then insider risk management, I would say it's more for mature security teams that have already developed the first two, because it kind of uses signals from those. But it's essentially protecting from internal nefarious behavior. This a very common one is somebody's leaving the company and they want to download a bunch of data from SharePoint and take it with them, or hopefully they're not going to use it with a competitor, but I've seen it happen. And so insider risk management, insider risk management solution essentially sets up policies so to detect and protect against people doing taking out actions like that, like downloading more than 50 megabytes of data, especially when they're about to leave, or sabotaging certain areas or deleting a bunch of repositories. So that's what IRM helps with. And then finally, so that's the compliance side. So we've got security on top, compliance on bottom, and then this arch that you see across is Sentinel. Is representing Sentinel, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a SIM source solution. If you have log sources outside of Microsoft, which most people do, like firewalls and things of that nature, that's really where Sentinel comes into play, and it can really help you not only speed up your investigations, but provide comprehensive automation and correlation for all of the log sources you're pulling in. So that's an explanation of kind of Microsoft 365 E5 security and compliance core capabilities, and what they can do to help protect your environment, both on the security side and the compliance side.
That was awesome, Jason. Thank you so much for going into all that. I do have a couple quick questions for you guys before we head off for the day, of course. But before we do that, the question finally did come up. I won the bet. We knew this was going to be asked. Cameron, what do you lose from the list if only you have an E3 license in Microsoft? So don't go incredibly technical, Jason. I know you can go into the weeds with this one. But yeah, let's address that question.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Cameron. It depends on which E3 license you have. I hate to say that as my first response, because if you look at Microsoft's list of questions or list of licenses, there's Office 365 E3, there's Windows 11 Enterprise E3. I'm guessing you're talking about the holistic Microsoft 365 E3. I'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation with you on that to really dive into like what you have and what you might be losing from what you see here on the screen. What I can tell you off the bat is that if it is a Microsoft 365 E3 license, it won't come with most of the security products you see here on the screen. You will get, I believe, at least Defender for Endpoint P1, and maybe a P1 level of some of the other products you see here on this screen, but you won't have the whole stack. So that's but again, I think it would be best if you'd like to learn more about like what you have and where you could go. I help customers with that all the time, and so I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about what you have, what you can use with your current licensing, and what it would look like for you to move to a different SKU if you were considering that. There are also a bunch of other SKUs that Microsoft provides outside of just the holistic Microsoft 365 E5 license. There are other kind of like smaller group SKUs or hodgepodge licensing that you can do that might be cheaper, that can still help you meet the same security goals that you're trying to meet. So
that's good. Yeah, I appreciate that, Jason. So yeah, if you want to have that follow-on conversation, Cameron, that'd be great. That's one of the reasons why we pay Jason here. He's fantastic with licenses. All right, let's pivot back to Terrence. Terrence, you look like you're falling asleep there a little bit. Let's wake you right back up. It's your turn. I do love your experience here, Terrence. You've been in the SOC, you've been in the trenches, you've seen, essentially what Jason just, walked through. I would love to hear maybe a world example that you worked through, on the critical start side from an MDR perspective and how you made a big impact for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Example wise, I'll try to touch on some of what Jason just spoke to as far as examples and using some of these very capabilities, right, to the benefit of a MDR SOC. So for starters, I'll start with a TBR related example. So we had a client that had previously asked us to filter out kind of remote access tools, but a specific one that they used in their environment, right? Screen Connect. Now, this was a pretty simple MDE, Defender for Endpoint alert, right? You're typically not going to see those. We only filtered it out during the hours in which they were going to be in the office as an IT help desk, right? One night, one of these alerts comes in for just nominal Screen Connect being downloaded on a host, not that big of a deal, right? We realized, hey, this is activity they said is nominal in the past, but not during this time period. We called them. It actually turned out to be nominal, but it easily could have not been. Now, I'll caveat that with a week later, we got the same alert and it was not expected behavior. It ended up being a legitimate, malicious, true positive, right? That's another one of those examples where I tie back to the very beginning. AI is an assistant more than actually taking over in that regard. I am biased, right? I work in a SOC, but at the same time, still a very big deal. I'll give a second example. This time we'll pivot more to identity-based actions and alerting, right? We had a client. This actually happened in the last month here, so it's a very recent example. Had a client who came to us and told us, hey, we are seeing a higher number of alerts or behavior in our environment related to people outside of the country trying to gain access to our environment, right? Please hire vigilance if you can, right? Fast forward a week, we started seeing all these alerts coming from India into their network, right? Previously, there was no precedent that was expected behavior. They were a US-based company, right? Very atypical, anomalous behavior, right? We're seeing those same alerts that Jason's talking about, right? Impossible travel, unfamiliar sign-ins, right? All your basic identity protections you expect to see alerting anytime anything atypical occurs, right? Reached out to them. Hey, we're seeing a whole lot of alerts coming in where people are trying to log in from India. Is this typical? Do you guys have someone out there? And it turned out they had hired a third-party contracting company that the security team had not been notified of, right? Just that easy, though. It could have been something malicious where people were trying to gain access to these accounts, right? And they were succeeding. These were successful logins, right? There was no evidence that this was VPN related. We weren't seeing IPs via OSINT that correlated back to something like an open VPN or Nord or Global Connect, right? Those are the moments where you want that human in between, right? You have all these things in that E5 license that we've heard Jason speak about so eloquently. I actually learned a few things there during that process. We've heard all those things, but you still need someone running it. What good is a room full of books if you don't have a librarian and shelves to organize these things, right? That's where me and my team of analysts come in, right? Our job is to go in there, make sure, yes, you have all this knowledge, you have all this data, you have all these logs. Let's make sure everything is configured and set up in a way that's easy for you to not only go in and search, not only easy for you to go in and investigate, triage, resolve, take those response actions, right? And better, on the off chance that your team is off hours or you don't want them being called at 3 a.m., having that MDR provider that's 24/7, 365. Well, now you have a team of people, human people in those offices. We have, the Texas location. We have a Utah for redundancy. We're taking those actions on your behalf. You heard about us talk about the blast radius earlier, where when we get these, like the India alerts that I'm speaking to right now, where we're able to go in and say, okay, well, we're seeing these logins. Are we seeing emails coming in, right? That happened before these login attempts? Are we seeing clicks, URL click related, right? Potentially malicious click URL. That's a Defender alert, right? For 365 E5, right? Are we seeing click through? Are we seeing click allowed? Meaning, did that user, were they just allowed to click straight through that email into the alert? Were they clicking through it and then Safe Links told them, hey, this looks like a malicious website. And they said, yeah, I want to see it anyways, right? That's all contextual information that our analysts here are putting into a timeline to build out whether or not we need to notify you guys or not.
Yeah, that's perfect, Terrence. And you kind of bring up another great point around kind of tailoring, an MDR program to the organization. Every organization is different, off time, on time, they have different sets of, security stacks and tooling. Maybe just talk a little bit about how Critical Start customizes its service for its customers to ensure it is cohesive, right, for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I missed the mute button, the first click. Yeah, so when it comes to tailoring things, my favorite way as an advisor to sit on these phone calls every week with my customers is to say, hey, what are your rules of engagements? We have these examples of alerts we sent out to you this week. How do we do on those? When we sent that escalation up, did it include actionable information for you guys, right? Is that stuff you guys need to keep working, right? Is that stuff that's actually valuable to your team? Because if not, let's get it out of there. That way you have more time to focus on the things that are valuable. Focus on the things that are worrying your C-suite, right? Because I'm sure if you're a security team, they're probably banging on your door asking, are you seeing this? Did you see this? What happened here? Right? We want you to be able to easily navigate to those. We don't want you focusing on things like, hey, this is atypical travel, but that's a IP I can find on a list for a VPN that's known safe and benign and it's authorized for your company to use. Why are you guys looking at those, right? Are there other factors that are important? Because if so, I can pass that information to our engineering team and have them build a detection that's specifically looking for that information in the security event table through Sentinel, right? So just locking those things down to more pertinent items, making sure we're giving your team all the time they need. We're the ones that will have a clock ticking on us as we lock down what's important and not important and get you guys information. We're not just sending you, hey, here's a notice that we saw something malicious. We're showing you everything we found. We're explaining to you why we think it's a risk. We're including OSINT information to make sure you understand, like, hey, this is the context that led here, right? Citing our sources. If you're a college professor or have ever written a paper before for research, right? Those are all pertinent values, are all impactful values that help teams not only lessen the burden of that alert fatigue that we've mentioned numerous times, but also ensure that when you're getting an alert, it's not just a notification, it's actual valuable feedback and insight into something that occurred in your environment. You can think of us as enhancing essentially that notification you were already getting in your console.
I love that, the custom tailoring. Yep, and that makes sense. Thank you so much, Terrence. As we begin to wrap things up, right before we have a Q&A session here at the end, Jason, last question for you. What's maybe one key takeaway you'd like our audience to remember about optimizing their SOC, leveraging Microsoft security?
Yeah, absolutely.
2 minutes or less. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to keep
I want to
it.
make sure we set that. You can go on for 20. I'm
You're
kidding.
gonna play the music on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would say, really think about maximizing the value of what you've invested in with Microsoft Security and how you're going to operationalize it. Terrence and I both talked today about how it's great to have a tool set in place. Obviously you want it properly configured, which we can also help with. We have a whole professional services bench that can help with it. But aside from that, once you have your tool set up, you need to be able to reduce alert fatigue, right? Reduce false positives. You might need to create custom content that's, valuable to you. You're going to need to, if you go with Microsoft, you're going to need to know Microsoft. All of our analysts are trained over 300 hours before they even touch an alert. And over 65% of our customer base is Microsoft customers. So what that means is our analysts are very highly trained in responding to Microsoft security alerts. And finally, so I talked about reducing alerts, custom content, and a SOC that's there, and we're there 24/7, 365. So if your organization can do all of that and you can afford the paying 5, 6, 7 analysts to do that work, then that's awesome, and we say all the more power to you, and we're here to be your partner. But if that's something where, you're looking for somebody to help you with all of those efforts and actually like not just subsidize it, but be a great partner to help you mature, I think Critical Start is a really great solution to help you get the most out of your Microsoft investment, right? Microsoft has its own price tag, but if you're not getting anything out of it and you're not operationalizing it, a lot of that money is just kind of going down the drain. So we're here to help you maximize the investment you have in your Microsoft solutions so that they're operationalized and you have a really, really strong security posture.
Thank you, Jason. That was perfect. So I'm going to throw up a quick poll question, and we're going to get that launched to you. If there's any questions you have right now, we have a couple of minutes left. Feel free to ask them in the chat line. Here's the poll. It's been launched. We'll just give it another minute or so if you guys have any additional questions, and then we'll close it out for the day. I do like the Gary Vee quote. You won't lose your job to AI, but you will lose it to someone who does know AI. That is entirely true, unfortunately. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Fantastic. Like one of those TikTok readers. Oh, you did such a great job. Fantastic. Oh, thank you. All right, guys, if there's no questions or additional questions for us today, I just want to thank you for your time. To the speakers today as well, Jason, Terrence, can't thank you enough for being on today's webinar. You guys offered an incredible amount of insightful information. Thank you so much. We'll have to do another one. Let's have a reunion show. We'll do another webinar sometime soon. But thank you everyone for joining in today, and please join our next one. It's coming out soon. Thanks, guys.